Hey everyone. So, I officially have a new favorite game of all time. And it's not Xenoblade. It's not Pikmin related. Um, I recently got into Final Fantasy. Um, a little late to the party. I played 7. It was probably about a year ago now, actually, that I played 7. Um, and then subsequently played 8 and 9, which I had on my Switch for the longest time. It just never played. Eventually, I have to get to 10 and 10-2, which I also have on my Switch, and 12, which I also have on my Switch. But that's kind of pending my girlfriend right now because we're playing through 9 together. We're also playing through Ace Attorney together. Point being, I'm a pretty big Final Fantasy fan now. They're probably all 3 of those games, other than maybe 8, probably sit handily in my top 50 games of all time. I think I still have yet to add them to the list, but I will do that come this January when I make that update to my top 50 list. But I got Final Fantasy VII Rebirth for my birthday this year, and I actually finished it a while ago. I finished it back in August, but the school year has been busy, and frankly I've been really trying to focus on that and really focus on making sure I'm the best teacher that I can possibly be this year. But this video has been pending in my brain for a long time. I beat Final Fantasy VII Rebirth in late August, and I pretty much did everything you can possibly do in one playthrough. I 100%ed it to the best of my ability without the stuff that requires subsequent playthroughs. The only thing that I didn't do is I didn't do anything like post-game. I didn't do any of the Gilgamesh stuff or any of the more difficult combat trials. I didn't finish those yet, but I plan to try to platinum the game eventually. I'm just taking a little bit of a breather from it because it does get a little bit grindy. But Final Fantasy VII Rebirth is very much a story-based game, which I have grown to love and appreciate lately. And it's mind-blowing, the attention to detail in this game. Like, I just played Remake for the first time in the beginning of the summer, just before, actually it was closer to spring that I played that. And like, I had no idea, like, just the depth that it goes in. I've never seen a game that puts as much attention to detail in it as Remake and Rebirth. It's literally like you walk around a town and every single NPC has side conversations that you can hear and listen into. The entire place just feels alive. And it goes tenfold into Rebirth because Final Fantasy VII Remake was just focused around the Midgar area of the game, so you're in just one town. And Rebirth finally gives you access to the entire open world. And I really like the way the open world is designed in Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. It's not a huge, sprawling world, but I feel like a lot of open world games nowadays make their worlds big for the sake of them being big. Breath of the Wild, in my opinion, is a little bit in that zone where Breath of the Wild, to me, is almost too big. Like, it feels like you spend a lot of time running from destination to destination rather than actually doing stuff in the world, where Final Fantasy VII Rebirth cuts down on a lot of that travel time, and there's much less distance between objectives, which I have grown to really appreciate in that game. The way it's structured, for those who don't know, is you kind of have set like sub areas almost, where you have to discover towers. The towers when you discover a tower, it kind of unveils all of the other objectives in that area. You can scan these divine stones or whatever for to help with your summons, to make your summons better. You can scan the life stream or life spring areas, which gives you more lore and also sometimes unlocks like extra combat trials or extra chocobo scouring. That's another thing you can unlock in the open world is chocobo scouring, where you can scour for items that you can craft, like crafting recipes. There's combat trials where you have to fight stronger versions of regular enemies in the game. And it's just all very full, and I really enjoyed navigating the open world. Like, especially like my first time just playing the first area, I was like looking in every nook and cranny, and I was like, this might be the best game that I've ever played. Like immediately from the get-go, I was like, they'd really have to mess this up later down the line for me to not like this, which did happen with Remake. If you remember my review of that, I really did not like the end of that game. I thought the last dungeon was way too long, which the last dungeon in Rebirth is long, but it's actually engaging, and I really like it. Like, a lot of the puzzles in it were actually really engaging and fun. Like, you get to flip up, and like you flip the gravity, so you're like walking on the ceiling and stuff like that. And it's really cool to navigate those puzzles. Something else that it built upon from Remake is the combat system is probably my favorite combat system I've ever played in a video game. Like, it combines action and turn-based in such a unique way, where you still have like your ATB bars that are used for using like special weapon abilities and using your magic, but you build them by using regular attacks. So it's somewhat turn-based, but very much action as well. And I really enjoy it. The combat is very engaging. The one thing is sometimes they overdo it a little bit with boss fights. Like sometimes when we like when my girlfriend and I were playing and we'd get into a boss fight, I'd be like, oh, well, I guess I better make dinner now because the boss fight is going to take like 20 minutes. I don't think it was ever quite that excessive, but it did feel like a long time, like a legitimately like 5 to 10 minute boss fight, which does give a sense of scale, which I really like, but sometimes it's a little bit much. The story is the story that you'd kind of expect from Final Fantasy VII. All of the groundwork was there in the original game to really build the narrative. But to be honest, like, it hooked me enough for me to finish the game. But Final Fantasy VII was definitely not my favorite of the PlayStation 1 games. And like, I get that it's like a classic, and it was the first like 3D Final Fantasy game in the same way that Ocarina of Time was the first 3D Zelda game. So I think nostalgia blinds people a little bit on the original Final Fantasy VII, because it is a great game. And honestly, I think like it's more groundbreaking than than Zelda or Mario. Like, it's like that, like Mario 64. It's probably the best game from that era that I've played. But it was definitely held back a lot. And now to see it fully expanded, it's really cool and engaging, because all of the like little nuances and the character interactions are super cool. Like, you can enjoy this game as your first like Final Fantasy VII experience, which is what my girlfriend is doing, or like me, who's played the original before. You get nods to things that you know are going to happen later, and it's like super cool little nuances in the character interactions that hint towards future events. But the story is really very profound here. The one thing that a lot of people are confused on and up in arms about is the ending. So spoiler alert, but I think I've talked about everything non-spoiler related that I wanted to. Overall, like, the gameplay was so engaging. Like, normally when I play story-based games like this, the story sometimes, like in Xenoblade, I would say a good like 40% of the time the story was driving me forward, and I wasn't necessarily engaged gameplay wise. I was just more trying to get to the next cutscene to see what would happen next. Whereas this game, I really was drawn in by the gameplay the entire time. But getting into the story in the ending, a lot of people are up in arms about how they are doing Aerith's death and what the overall implications are going to be for the third game. There are a lot of theories, and the theory that I'm kind of clinging to right now is that Cloud is messed up in the head, obviously, and we're seeing it from his perspective of him disassociating away from her being stabbed, and we're seeing his perception, his diluted perception of the events that occurred. And we will get the emotional impact that everyone else has in the third game, where he has to relive it. One person specifically, like in a YouTube comment that I saw, said, like, when we go to the live stream to recover Cloud and bring him back, he's going to have to face head on that memory that he clouded himself. Because at first I was taking it as a split in the timeline that they were trying to showcase, but that theory kind of is being pushed out of my mind right now, because my preferred canon would be, like, she did still die, and that's why the entire party is mourning her at the end of the game, and we're seeing it through Cloud's perspective, where he can't believe that she died and physically refuses to believe that she died. So he still sees her there. He's still talking to her at the end of the game, but she's not actually there, which I think will be like a big reveal that they're saving for the third game. That's what my hope is. But I do trust their sense of direction, because they wouldn't want to take that impact away. It would just feel weird for them. Like, I think in the general sense, it would feel weird for that huge emotional impact to hit at the end of the second game, and then to be like, well, what's going to happen in the third one now? Because I was talking to my girlfriend about it, and I was like, that's kind of the big emotional peak of the game, in my opinion. Like, there are still other like moments that will happen in the final game of the trilogy, but that was the big emotional impact of the original that kind of gets everyone to go like, whoa, what is going on here, and gets everyone hooked and locked in. My personal opinion, actually, like, people, I think, are blinded by nostalgia, because Aerith is probably, like, when you think of major character deaths in video games, she is the spoiler. Like, I knew about it before I played Final Fantasy VII, and I don't even know how I knew, but I knew she died. Like, it is the video game spoiler that, like, everyone knows. But I feel like people cling to nostalgia a little bit, and, like, Cloud has some really profound, like, lines when she dies. Like, the whole line about how he can't believe that this is real, how we'll never get to hear Aerith speak again, or, like, stuff like that. Like, that was really profound and emotionally impactful, and I feel like we're gonna get that in the third game. But at the same time as well, I really think that Aerith's death is semi-bad writing in the original game, because it just comes out of nowhere. Like, it, like, blindsides you, which I get is the point, but it's also, like, a stupid point, because it's like, it's a death to a main character just to have the shock value, it feels like. Like, it does serve purpose to the narrative, but it's like, they didn't necessarily have to do that, in my opinion. But Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, overall, I'm going to play through it again on hard mode to get my platinum trophy. I'm going to do all the super difficult combat challenges. The only real critique that I have of the game is the same thing that everyone says. the mini games get to be a bit much. It's a game that's super fun if you are not committed to 100%ing it. Because, like, when I was reading up on the reviews before I played it, I was like, the only complaint people seem to have is that it has too much content. And how is that even a real complaint? But now that I've played it, I kind of get the vibe, because it truly feels like some of the things that it asks you to do for, like, the Platinum Trophy, which again is above and beyond. So that's why I feel like it shouldn't affect your overall enjoyment of the game. It's like you're choosing to do this. Some of it is a bit much, like especially the fact that I spent probably about an equivalent of 5 to 10 hours on chocobo racing alone. Like, it's cool that there's an entire racing game inside of Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, but it's like, and then there's there's so many like completely weird games that are just like completely not in this genre whatsoever. Like, there's a game where for those who don't know, there's a game where you play as frogs and it's basically Fall Guys. Like, you're jumping, like there's a spinning thing that's knocking you off, or it's trying to knock you off, and you have to jump over it and stay alive for a certain amount of time. It's literally Fall Guys. But the mini games do get to be a bit much. I enjoyed most of them. It's just that, like, trying to get all of the rewards from them in some of the mini games was like legitimately painful and excruciating. Like, I would sit there for like 2 hours spent on one mini game trying to grind it out. But I did them all, except there was one, the Cactuar chase thing, where you have to kill a certain amount of Cactuars. I got to the last expert one with Aerith, and I was like, I'm going to do this later. I just want to finish the game at this point. And that's kind of how it felt towards the end of the game, was it just felt like it blows you away with just side quest. Like, immediately when you get to like the last chapter that side quests become available, it's like it assaults you with side quests. It's like you have a side quest in every main area, like a long one, like an overarching one to complete, plus the expert level of all of the Golden Saucer mini games become available at that time, plus all of the Chocobo racing additional races become available at that point. So it's just like at the end of the game, it just gets like, up until then, the pacing was fine with the mini games, like how they were inserted. But at that point, it got to be like just too much at once, in my opinion. But overall, I loved the game. And it, for now, is probably my favorite game of all time. It's going to sit at number 1 at the end of this year. And I know for a fact that this is like undisputed, because I was playing Final Fantasy VII Rebirth over the summer, like I said, and then I went back to my parents' house, and my brother, I'm playing Xenoblade 3 with him off and on, and it just doesn't catch me in the same way. And I love Xenoblade 3. It's my 3rd favorite game of all time now, but like, just to have Final Fantasy VII go so much further than that, like, it has to be number 1. But I hope you've enjoyed my ramblings of Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, and I'll talk to you next time. Peace out.